Hello and welcome to my review of the Warhammer 40,000 Conquest issue 51. This video comes directly after the first look at this issue. As always, the issue will set you back £7.99 and it includes half of the Hemotrope Reactor box set, which would typically cost you £27.50 for two of these, so you're saving quite a considerable amount of money. You do get the second one eventually in one of the later issues, which is great because then you have a pair of them. So even if you doubled the price of this magazine to £16, you're still saving £11.50, and you're still saving a good chunk even if you were to buy this box set of scenery from a third party or something like that. So let's have a look at the magazine itself. We've already done this in the first look, but I like to go through it in the review. It talks about the Space Marine Salamanders, the Dark Imperium, the Heretic Astartes, a showcase, which I think I said in the first look is a common theme that the Conquest magazines do now, which is showcase armies and models from other ranges, even though they're not included in this one. A bit of a big advert for Games Workshop, I guess. How to build the Hemotrope Reactor. It goes together very straightforward. You're only going to have an issue with the join because it comes in two parts. Once you put it together, there's going to be a bit of a join, but get a file in there and file that join away as best you can, smooth it out, and then it goes together quite straightforward. It's very simple to put together. They paint it fully in lead belcher. If you can get a can of lead belcher spray, that's the best thing that I would suggest you do, is spray it in lead belcher. Then once that's completely dry, shade it in Nuln Oil, completely cover it, and then what I would do is I would personally then once that's completely dry, give it quite a few hours or even a day or so, there's no rush, then I would dry brush it with the Necron compound. What they've actually done though is they've painted the black, and then they painted the gold and the green. They've painted all these other aspects, and then they've dry brushed it. Now the only danger with doing that is you may dry brush the Necron compound on the gold, which doesn't make it as pop as much, in my humble opinion, but it's up to you. You can experiment. Even if you've got these models, these are good little testers for the bigger sort of more expensive kits, but they really go into the detail of all the wiring and things. They make it into such a big hobby project, which is fantastic, and one of these does deserve that kind of attention. They don't talk about how to put the blue in the plasma areas, whereas the main set they do, and they don't bother painting the red on the tubing on the pipeline. So again, that's up to you if you want to do that. It goes through the rules of the Hemotrope Reactor. There isn't really any rules, I guess. I'll go through the rules later on, both in this and in my chapter approved book, but basically it's counting a hazardous cover. It's really quite odd how they kind of describe it as being like a 7+ in terms of saving, but essentially their save normally is a 3+. The hazardous cover adds 1 to their save, so that means that they only need a 2+. However, in this example they show they actually get a save of 6. So then that turns that save into a 7, which means the Plague Marine suffers a mortal wound. I guess that reflects that the Space Marine, the Plague Marine, sorry, gets a too good a save, like he was too much in cover, so he's using too much of the reactor there to take the brunt of the force, so he was completely covered. However, they then get a mortal wound for that, which can be quite horrific. They call it a regulator rules, but then they say here's an example of the Hemotrope Reactors rules. So I don't know whether that's a typo. Regulator rules should be reactor. Anyway, whatever. They talk about Power Surge, which is a mission where you actually put the reactor in the top right hand corner, and you have a Death Guard deployment down in the bottom left of the board. This is falling apart as we speak. But the next issue will be the first look and review all in one video of 52, because it just has the Astro Granite or Astro Granite, however you want to call it. And if issue 53 will be quite straightforward. It just has one bike. I've already built that bike. I built it with the other two, so that will be quite straightforward. First look at and review, but there'll be two separate videos for issue 53. Then we're on issue 54, and it's not that. And that means that there's only 26 issues or so before the end, before it finishes in issue 80. Okay, so that's the magazine. We'll pop that out of the way. Let's have a look at this model close up. So I'll just move the camera around a bit. I will do some size comparisons in a moment, but firstly, let's have a look at it. It's quite a tall structure, I want to say. I'll show you it next to a Space Marine shortly, but yeah, it definitely has a bit of presence, and two of them together, you can technically join two of them together, you know, to mirror that one and have it quite a substantial piece of scenery on your board. It's definitely bigger than I expected, but loads of detail on here, plenty to pick out with that Necron compound, and you really should do it justice and get in there with the blue and you know, work your magic. I don't know whether you want to do all the pipes and coils and things. You can do, but the stack is going to be, the exhaust stack is going to be quite straightforward. And again, if you want to put paint the individual pipes and tubing in there, you can do. It seems quite exposed though, all those cabling, and they all seem quite exposed. It's a shame that there isn't any housing. Maybe they didn't think about that it was in a war zone when the Ad Mechanicus were just creating this. They looked at how efficient and I guess lightweight and easy to build and repair as possible when they were making this. Or maybe it's just based on an old standard template construct. Who knows? Who actually knows? But yeah, it's an interesting model. Definitely sort of quite grim dark with this big old servitor type skull thing. I don't even know whether it's needed, whether that is needed on there, but yeah, I like this sort of hatch door with a little porthole thing. I guess that you can open that, and there's a vent there, and then the pipeline can connect to the other pipelines. Let's just show you it connected. I mean, here's the pipeline that comes with the subscription. I've picked up the broken one like an absolute idiot. Aha, this is the correct one. So yeah, as you can see, look, that feeds directly off of there, and it's very seamless. You don't need to glue these together. You can just lay it like that and keep that on the board, and then mix and match. You can have it this way as well. You can have it this way. Okay, well maybe not that way, because I've glued that on a bit of a slant. Maybe I should have. Yeah, I guess I needed to have paid a bit more attention to the angle that was at, but it looks quite straight from here. Oh well, that's odd, but that one is at least straight, and so is that one. So yeah, the point I'm trying to make is you can integrate this seamlessly into the rest of your scenery pieces. It looks quite cool next to the plasma regulators. It's not. It is taller than the regulator as well. It just doesn't have this catwalk or gantry addition to it. But yeah, near them, they share the similar aesthetic compared to a container. Gives you an idea. And containers aren't small compared to the wall. Look, even like a bit of Rise of Ruins. It's definitely, you know, it's one of the biggest scenery pieces you'll have in this kit, other than the Alchemite stack, which you know, that's coming up on the channel at some point soon. I'll just show you some size comparisons next to some other models in the subscription. Well, this is just a normal Space Marine anyway, which you can pick up at anywhere. It's interesting to note that you don't get any normal size Space Marines in the subscription, except for the ones on the bikes and the scouts. Yeah, they sort of still count, don't they? But yeah, look at that. It is a fair bit bigger than a normal Space Marine, and a Primaris. It even dwarfs a Primaris. You can fit quite a few Primarises, you know, around there for the same height. Compared to some Death Guard models, I've got normal Plague Marine, and look, it completely dwarfs the cultists. So you have cultists milling about this thing and it's going to overshadow them. And then next to a Plague Marine and a Blight Lord Terminator. So it's quite a substantial scenery kit in the grand scheme of things. Okay then, looking at my chapter approved book under the battlefield terrain section, hemotrope reactors do get their own profile in a way. It goes on to describe the reactors as objects of cover for the brave only. When a model targets an enemy unit that has all of its models within 3 inches of a hemotrope reactor, the target unit receives the benefit of cover if at least 25% of every model is obscured by it from the point of view of the shooting model. That can get a bit complicated to sort of understand, but basically enemy units have to be within 3 inches of it, and the target unit receives that benefit if at least 25% of every model is obscured by it as well. So there's 2 things there. They have to be within 3 inches and at least a quarter of every model is obscured by it. So obviously it counts as cover, so you're going to be upping your save by an extra 1. So if you've got a save of 3+, you're going to get a cover save of 2+, but it counts as hazardous cover, whereby you roll a d6 each time you make a saving throw of 7+, such as a roll of a 6 + 1 for being in cover, for a model within 3 inches of any terrain features with this ability in the shooting phase. On a 1, the model's unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So basically it's a little bit different than what the regulator rules explains in the Conquest magazine. The Conquest magazine just talks about the saving result being a 7. It doesn't talk about what you have to do next, which the chapter approved book does. It says you roll a d6 each time you make a saving throw of 7+. So each time you get a 6 on your dice, it bumps it up to a 7. You roll an extra d6 after that saving throw of a 7, and you get a 1, then the model's unit suffers a 1 mortal wound. So whereas the Conquest magazine, it kind of negates that rolling an extra d6 and getting a 1. It just goes straight into, oh, if you get a 7, then gets a mortal wound. That's not the case according to chapter approved. You roll another d6 on top of that, and then if you're unfortunate, you're going to struggle to have a unit of 20 models, all of its models within 3 inches of this this thing, unless you spread them around the whole thing to try and fit 20 of them. You're more likely going to have 5 of them within the 3 inches, maybe 10. So even a horde army near these getting a lot of cover, again, you can only get that cover within the 3 inches and 25% of them being obscured. It's a bit tricky. One, there's a chance that you're not going to get the cover, and secondly, there's a higher risk of you getting more 6s, and but then on top of that, you then have to be unlucky and roll a load of 1s to get mortal wounds. So statistically you should be fine with bigger units, because there's the chance of you not being obscured anyway, and also you having to roll the 1s afterwards. So it's potentially more dangerous for you having a squad of 5 elite models near it. You're best off having the elite models away from this thing. If they've got 2+ saves already, there's no real reason for them to be near it. Unless you want that, I say invulnerable save, you know, the cover save. And the smaller the squad size, the more chance they've got the cover, but also there's more chance that most of them may well be within that range that could get 7. So it's up to you whether you want to take that risk for the added cover. Yeah, weaker units, I would definitely do that. If you've got a squad of 10 cultists or other weaker units, orcs, you know, if you've got a squad of 10 or 15 boys, try and put them around this, I'd guess, because, you know, changing their saves from 6s to 5s or 5s to 4s is really going to help you out. Any kind of cover will, and it's just a risk you're going to have to take. But according to chapter approved, after the 7s, you've then only got to get 1s to get your mortal wounds. So I hope all that makes sense. I think it's a lovely scenery kit. I think it's great that they bundled it in with the Conquest magazine. I'm not a big fan of them splitting the kit into 2. They do this a lot. They did it with the Munitorum containers. you know, 3 issues for 3 containers. And when you get other kits that are over £20 or so in one issue, I personally think that 1 issue should have both of these in. It would definitely increase the value of the issue, and I just think if other issues can do that, why can't others? Anyway, what do you guys think of the model and the rules? Please do put it in the comments below. It'd be great to hear from you. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. Thank you for watching. The Emperor Protects.